the people that he can, and he is not able to save the 2 crewmen who unfortunately die in the blast. So this is a pretty, like, this is an incredibly difficult decision for anybody to make. But I mean, the Doctor at the end of the day is a computer program. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this scene and what you thought about this choice that the Doctor had to make.
So for me, this is the beginning of this episode, as far as what I said earlier about the actual real life tough choices you'd be making if you were in that situation. Of course, if you're a Voyager fan and you've seen all the entire series, you remember the 2-parter Equinox. And Equinox was definitely there to show you the dichotomy between the 2 differences, the 2 routes you would take if you were stuck out in the middle of nowhere. Like, would you do anything you can and sacrifice people and alien species just to get home faster to protect your crew? Or would you follow Prime Directive and Starfleet regulations like Janeway and her crew did? This one right here, the scene shows, the first hint of, like, tough choices and not always happy endings. Because the first 4 seasons, you see, of course there's drama, but normally they come out on top, at the end. It starts off where you're fighting Maquis rebels, and then you end up out there together, and then next thing you know, you see a Maquis, former Maquis in Starfleet uniforms. And that's, like, very quick and a little convenient. You know what I mean? Like, I know that they're stuck out there in the middle of nowhere, but still, like, I think that it would take a much longer time for that to develop. Like, to me, the first 10 episodes should have been them, like, in the brig, and then them talking their way out of it, and then Janeway realizing, hey, we're stuck out here together, might as well, like, do something together. Mm-hmm. And, instead of doing that, they tied it up in a nice bow and made you kind of happy-go-lucky and hold hands. Well, this scene shows that all those bets are off. Like, they're making the tough decisions in this story arc. They're out on their own. The ship's falling apart. They have to survive. They're in survival mode. For the first real time that we see them, they're in survival mode, which is what you would be from the second you got to the Delta Quadrant. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I think you're absolutely right that this is definitely, they're definitely in survival mode in these 2 episodes, because, I mean, that's all they're doing is they are just surviving attacks and just getting more and more beat up as the episode goes on.
I have to say about this specific scene, we see the Doctor, like, close the door on the other guys, and I feel like, you mentioned, oh, he's just a computer program. Yeah, but I feel like what this show has done really well, and I know you didn't mean it like that, but, it almost seems like we shouldn't care. Like, oh, yeah, he would do that because he's a computer. But, he spent all this time trying to be more human, and he even likes to hear gossip. That's, like, my favorite bit. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Brooke, you're absolutely right, because there are episodes where the Doctor is teaching 7 of 9 to be more human. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So clearly they're writing this hologram program as something way more than a computer program. Mm-hmm. I mean, just like Data, except for the Doctor, the MH character, is clearly, like, above and beyond of what Data's growth was or capability was as recreating humankind and being a human. The Doctor has pretty much achieved that in this show.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, that's 100% right.
I think without that, it wouldn't be as, like, like a dramatic bit to the scene. It would just be like, yeah, well, he's a machine. Whatever. Of course he did that. He doesn't care about people. But we know that he does, and that he waited and to the very last moment, and then close the door. So I think that's like a really it shows how well they've developed his character to show that he wants to be more human, for us to get the impact of of this scene.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Because if you saw Data or Tuvok or Spock or Seven of Nine doing that scene, it wouldn't be so impactful, because those people will make the logical choice. But it's not them in this scene; it's the Doctor, and it actually has way more of an impact than if one of those other people did it. So yeah, I agree. And that's
Seven would just be like. Yeah. Seven would have just gone through and shut the door and kept going.
Yeah, she would wait a second, but then realize that the logical choice and individuality is irrelevant.
They're too slow. They're not going to make it. Not even going to wait.
Definitely.
Well, I think that this scene gets a really interesting payoff later on in the mess hall, which has become like the triage, when Tom and the Doctor have a conversation about this scene. And it's true, I guess what I was saying before about him being basically a computer program is that one could easily make the assumption, well, he's really an extension of the computer, and the computer makes decisions based on pure facts, and one could even say logic. So surely this decision, should have been easy because he's a computer, basically. But as we're finding out, that decision was very hard for him, and to the point that you could see him experiencing a form of guilt over it. But at the same time, if it were any of us in that position, I mean, what was the alternative? To leave the door open past the countdown, and they're still rushing to get in, and now you lose everybody, including the people you've just evacuated from sickbay. So he's having a very human response, even though technically, I guess he shouldn't have a human response. But it's a really great scene here, and I feel like, we get even more depth of it when, the Doctor and Tom kind of talk about it later on, when they're triaging patients. But yeah, a really, really great scene right here in the middle of the episode. So basically, so they've survived this attack. Janeway tells Tuvok to survey the ship deck by deck with security teams to get a full damage report. She tells Chakotay, "You have the bridge, what's left of it." And she goes into her ready room, which is a disaster. Debris everywhere. Computers are broken. Everything is just all over the place. And Chakotay comes in basically with an alternative plan. And he says, we should leave the ship behind, break the crew up into smaller groups, put them on shuttles, put them in escape pods, and we'll all basically do our best to get through space, through this part of space on our own in groups, and then we'll rendezvous outside of Krenim space. And Janeway is not going for this plan. She says, we're stronger together. I'm not going to break up the family. She says, if we're separate, then we can't pool our resources, and that's where we excel. And she says, as long as Voyager's in one piece, we're going to stay with the ship. So what do you guys think of Chakotay's plan here? Do you think it's a good plan? Do you think he's ridiculous? What do you guys think of his plan?
Well, so peeking behind the curtain, when I was reading about Fuller pitching this arc to Rick Berman, he was pitching this as a season-long story arc.
Oh, interesting.
And it got rejected, but the writers were like so into it because this is 2 years after Deep Space Nine's launch, and that Deep Space Nine is very serialistic. Like it was one big arc. Like that was the first time that we'd seen that in Star Trek. We see one big story, and Berman was fighting to be the anti-DS9 because he didn't want the Star Trek fatigue to set in, where there was two simultaneous shows happening with a big arc, and he just wanted to keep it more like TOS and TGN with nice, neat, closed single episode stories. The writers were super into this idea of writing the Year of Hell as a full season. Season 4 was supposed to be all of Year of Hell, and the plan was that they were going to all break up into shuttles and escape pods and all that. And there was going to be several episodes where you just see the two people that are in the escape pod. Like you don't even see Janeway or Chakotay for a whole episode. And then next episode, and they were going to do like individual stories about them being separated. And that was the whole thing. And as I'm listening to this, you can tell like that's what the setup was. This was written as the setup, and eventually they do break up. Obviously, we know that, but this was supposed to be that setup for just the adventures of Tom Paris and Harry Kim on some other planet that they crash land on and try to like survive until Voyager picks them back up again. You know what I mean? So I liked the plan because it was once again it's a hint of survival mode. And Janeway's voice here is, basically the voice of Rick Berman saying, no, we're going to stay together because Voyager is, stronger as one piece.
And
well,
that's very interesting. That's a very interesting insight into that scene.
Because I would have loved to have seen that. I don't know. I mean, maybe people like the close-ended series and wanted to stay away from the style that DS9 was going, but one season of the Year of Hell, which is why they called it that, because it was literally supposed to be a Year of Hell, and that would have been cool. So it's hard for me to watch that scene and just think about the plan and say, okay, well, would it have worked? Knowing you're rewatching it again for the fourth or fifth time, knowing that was supposed to be the setup for the way this was going. So anyway, just thought I'd interject with that.
No, that's very interesting stuff that you just shared with us. What do you think, Brooke, about this plan that Chakotay has to break up the ship?
I kind of agree with Janeway that as long as it was in one piece, that they should stay together. Because how many times does it happen whenever, you're like, hey, we're going to meet up at the ice cream stand, and you're at like Bonnaroo or something, and there's just so many people, and you just never do.
Right.
Like, you get separated from your friends, or it's like in space, no one can hear you scream. But also, you can't necessarily find each other, Like, what if they went different directions? Like, there's not even cardinal directions. So it's like, what? Anyway, I don't know. I feel like maybe they wouldn't make it. And I don't know. I like the idea of them all being together if something happens.
Yeah.
She's a captain. She wants to go down with her ship. She wants to stay together.
Yeah. And, certainly, like, from the beginning, Janeway's line was always, or her take was always, we are a family out here. We are all that. We only have each other. We don't have the Federation. We don't have other starships. We don't have the comforts and the luxury of home. So, we only have each other. We are our own family. And so I definitely see why she's saying we have to stay together. But I can't deny that there's a part of me that would have loved to have seen a whole season of everybody kind of on their own, doing their own thing. And maybe not even a whole season, but maybe like a 5-episode arc or something like that. Even I would have been